The viewing screen showed a structure so massive that Doyen's brain struggled to process its scale. Nexus Prime stretched across space like a metal continent, its surface covered in millions of docking ports that glowed with soft blue light. Ships from 100 different worlds moved in perfect patterns around it, their movements coordinated with impossible precision. "We're really here," Minji whispered from her station. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked the cultural database one more time. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, learning everything humanity knew about the 43 species in the Galactic Collective. Now all that preparation felt inadequate. Doyen kept his face calm even though his heart was racing. As captain of the Horizon's Gate, he needed to project confidence. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They had trained for this mission for years, but training and reality were very different things. "Incoming transmission," Ara announced from communications. "It's the Welcome Committee." The screen shifted to show a being that looked like it was made of flowing water held in a transparent suit. Its voice came through the speakers in perfect English, though Doyen knew it was actually speaking its own language through a translator. "Humanity Vessel Horizon's Gate, you are cleared for Docking Bay 7743. Please proceed to the scanning station. All new species must be processed before entry to Nexus Prime." "Acknowledged," Doyen replied. He nodded to his pilot, who guided their ship toward the designated bay. "What kind of scanning are we talking about?" "Standard threat assessment protocol. All species undergo evaluation. The process is painless and takes approximately 4 minutes. Please do not be alarmed." The transmission ended. Sunho, the security chief, turned his chair to face Doyen. His expression was tight with concern. "I don't like going in blind. We have no idea what they're actually scanning for." "We don't have a choice," Doyen said. "Humanity's been trying to make contact with the collective for 40 years. We can't turn back now because we're nervous." Hyun looked up from his station, his eyes focused on something the others couldn't see as he reviewed system data through his neural interface. "I'm detecting some unusual network traffic from the station. There's a lot of processing power being used, more than you'd expect for a simple threat scan." "Can you tell what it's for?" Minji asked. "Not yet. The encryption is beyond anything I've seen before, but I'm logging everything. If something seems wrong, we'll have data to review." The Horizon's Gate slid into the docking bay, and the massive doors sealed behind them with a gentle thud that vibrated through the hull. Doyen stood and straightened his uniform. It was dark blue with silver trim, designed to look both professional and non-threatening. The entire crew wore similar uniforms. "Minji, Sunho, Hyun, you're with me. Ara, monitor all communications while we're gone. If you detect anything suspicious, get us out of here." Ara nodded, her fingers already dancing across her console. "Be careful, Captain." The airlock cycled open, and Doyen led his team into a corridor that curved away in both directions. The walls were a pale gray material that seemed to absorb sound. Everything felt muted, quiet in a way that made Doyen's ears feel pressured. A delegation of 3 aliens waited for them. The water being from the transmission stood in the center. To its left was something that looked like a collection of floating crystal shards arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape. To its right was a creature covered in iridescent scales that shifted through every color Doyen could name. "Welcome, humans," the water being said. Its name appeared on Doyen's translator display as something unpronounceable, followed by the simplified version, Representative Vel. "I am honored to guide you through the integration process. Please follow me to the scanning chamber." They walked through corridors that all looked identical. Doyen tried to memorize the route but quickly lost track of the turns. Minji stayed close to Representative Vel, asking questions about collective culture and history. The representative answered each question perfectly, but something about the responses felt rehearsed, like it was reading from a script. The scanning chamber was a large circular room with a raised platform in the center. Screens covered the walls, displaying information in dozens of languages, including English. "Please step onto the platform," Representative Vel instructed. "The 4 of you may scan together. The system will evaluate your species based on neural patterns, cultural markers, and behavioral indicators. There is no need for concern. In 50,000 years of operation, the system has never made an error." Doyen exchanged glances with his team. Hyun gave a small nod, indicating his monitoring equipment was recording everything. They stepped onto the platform together. The scanning began without warning. Light flooded the room, not bright enough to hurt, but intense enough to make Doyen squint. He felt something brush against his thoughts. a presence that seemed to read his memories like files in a computer. It wasn't painful, but it felt invasive in a way that made his skin crawl. Images flashed through his mind. His childhood on Earth, his training at the Naval Academy, the day he was chosen to captain the Horizon's Gate, the face of his daughter asking him when he would come home. Every significant memory, every strong emotion, all of it examined in seconds. Then it was over. The light faded and a message appeared on every screen in the room simultaneously. Species human classification, non-hostile status approved for collective membership. Representative Vell made a sound that the translator interpreted as joy. Excellent. Humanity is welcome to the Galactic Collective. You are the 127th species to achieve this honor. Very few species qualify as non-hostile. You should be proud. Minji was smiling, clearly relieved. Sunho relaxed slightly, though his hand still rested near his sidearm. Doyen tried to share their relief, but something felt wrong. He couldn't explain what, just a feeling in his gut that screamed danger. Hyun's eyes had gone distant again, focused on data only he could see through his interface. His face had gone pale. "Captain," he said quietly, "we need to talk. Now." But Representative Vell was already guiding them toward another corridor, talking about the welcoming ceremony and the quarters that had been prepared. Doyen caught Hyun's arm. "What did you find?" "There's a secondary process," Hyun whispered, his voice barely audible. "The scan activated something in the background, a separate program that started running the moment we were classified as non-hostile. I've never seen code architecture like this. It's still running, and I think it's spreading signals toward human space." "What kind of signals?" "I don't know yet. But Captain, the amount of processing power being dedicated to this is enormous. This isn't just a background task, it's something major, and they're hiding it deliberately." Doyen looked at Representative Vell, who was waiting patiently at the corridor entrance. The water being's expression was unreadable, but its body language seemed friendly and open. "Can you investigate without them knowing?" Doyen asked. "I can try, but if this is what I think it is, we might be in serious trouble. Then work fast." They followed Representative Vell deeper into Nexus Prime, toward celebrations and diplomatic meetings that suddenly felt much more dangerous than they had minutes before. The Galactic Collective had welcomed humanity with open arms, but Doyen couldn't shake the feeling that they had just walked into a trap that had been waiting 50,000 years to spring closed. Behind them, invisible to human eyes, quantum signals reached out toward Earth like fingers stretching across the dark. 3 weeks had passed since the scanning ceremony, and life on Nexus Prime had settled into a routine that made Doyen increasingly uncomfortable. Every morning, he attended diplomatic meetings with collective representatives. Every afternoon, his crew participated in cultural exchanges with various alien species. Every evening, they returned to their quarters exhausted but no closer to understanding what Hyun had discovered. The historian Ji-won had arrived on a supply ship 2 days ago, specifically requested by Doyen. She sat in the Horizon's Gates conference room now, surrounded by holographic displays showing collective historical records. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. "I've been through records for 18 species," she said, highlighting sections of text that appeared in the air. "The pattern is consistent across all of them. Each species joins the collective as non-hostile. For approximately 50 years, their records show normal diversity. Different opinions, political debates, cultural variations. Then everything changes." Minji leaned forward. "Changes how?" "It becomes uniform, standardized. Look at this." Ji-won pulled up records from a species called the Vellans. For their first 40 years in the collective, you can see evidence of disagreement about integration policies. Some Vellans wanted deeper cooperation with other species. Others wanted to maintain their independence. Normal political discourse. She shifted the timeline forward. Then at year 53, all disagreement stops. Every Vellan representative votes the same way. Every cultural report describes their society in identical terms. Their art becomes derivative. Their literature loses complexity. It's like the entire species became a single voice. Sunho crossed his arms. Could they have just achieved consensus? Found a way to work together better? Across every single member of their species? Ji-won shook her head. That's not how societies work. There's always variation, always dissent. But look at this. She pulled up data from 17 other species. The same pattern appears in all of them. Approximately 50 years after joining, complete uniformity. No exceptions. Hyun had been silent, working on his tablet. Now he looked up with an expression that frightened Doyon. "I broke through another layer of the encryption," he said. "The background process that activated during our scan has a name in the collective's ancient code. They call it the Convergence Protocol." "Convergence toward what?" Doyon asked. "I don't know yet, but I tracked the signals that left Nexus Prime after our scan. They went to every human colony. Specifically, they targeted the communication infrastructure that the collective installed in our systems 3 years ago." Minji's face went pale. "The quantum relay nodes. They said those were gifts to improve our communications." "They're relay nodes, all right," Hyun said. "But I don't think they're for communication. I think they're receivers waiting for activation. And based on Jiwon's timeline, I think that activation happens around 50 years after a species is scanned." Ara entered the conference room, slightly out of breath. She had been monitoring collective communication networks as part of her official duties, but Doyon had asked her to pay attention to anything unusual. "I found something," she said, pulling up her own data. "There are signals being transmitted constantly throughout Nexus Prime. They're incredibly subtle, woven into normal network traffic. I wouldn't have noticed except I was specifically looking for hidden communications." "Can you decode them?" Doyon asked. "That's the strange part. They're not encrypted, they're just operating on frequencies that most species can't naturally perceive. When I isolated them and ran them through our analysis software, they appear to be some kind of carrier wave." "Carrying what?" "I don't know. But they're being broadcast to every species in the collective constantly. Everyone here is bathed in these signals every second of every day." Minji had been quiet, her expression troubled. Now she spoke up. "I need to tell you something. I've been doing cultural exchanges with a Velen named Kessa. She seemed nice, very helpful, always knew exactly what to say. But yesterday, something strange happened." She pulled up a recording from her personal log. It showed her sitting with an alien that looked like a 6-legged deer with too many eyes. They were discussing art. "Watch what happens when I ask her about pre-collective Velen sculpture," Minji said. On the recording, the alien started to respond, then suddenly froze. Her mouth moved, repeating the same phrase 3 times. "Velen art achieved perfection through collective guidance. Velen art achieved perfection through collective guidance. Velen art achieved perfection through collective guidance." Then, she blinked and continued the conversation as if nothing had happened. "I thought maybe I misheard," Minji said. "But when I reviewed the footage, it was clear. She glitched, like a computer program stuck in a loop." Doyon felt cold spread through his chest. "Have you seen this happen with other species?" "I started paying attention after that." "Yes. Small moments where individuals seem to lose themselves. They repeat phrases, their eyes go distant, and then they snap back. It happens to representatives from every species I've met with." Jiwon was pulling up more records, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "The collective has existed for 50,000 years. Do you know how many wars they've had in that time? 0. How many political conflicts? 0. How many species have left the collective? 0. "That's good, isn't it?" Sunho said. "Peace is good." "Peace is good," Jiwon agreed. "But this isn't peace. This is the absence of conflict because everyone agrees about everything. That's not natural. That's not how intelligent species work. We argue. We disagree. We find new solutions through debate and conflict. A society without any disagreement isn't a society. It's something else." Hyun stood up and walked to the main display. "I need to show you what I found in the Convergence Protocol's outer layer. This is just the surface level, but it's enough to understand what we're dealing with." He brought up a complex diagram that looked like a neural network, but far more intricate than anything human-made. "This is a neural restructuring program designed to be deployed via quantum entanglement. Once activated, it can reach every member of a species simultaneously through the relay nodes they've installed." "Reach them how?" Doyon asked, though he was afraid he already knew. "By rewriting their neural pathways. Slowly, over years, It changes how they think. It doesn't erase their memories or personalities. It just makes certain thoughts uncomfortable. Disagreement starts to feel wrong. Independent thinking becomes difficult. And cooperation with the collective feels natural and right. Minji put her hand over her mouth. They're not members of the collective. They're being controlled by it. Not controlled, Yun corrected. That's the elegant part. They still think they're making their own choices. The protocol just shapes those choices so that everyone naturally aligns with collective thinking. It's not mind control, it's mind convergence. How long do we have? Do-Yun asked. Hyun checked his calculations. Based on the timeline from other species, the full convergence process takes approximately 50 years. But the relay nodes are already in place. If the collective decides to accelerate the process, we might have much less time. We need to warn Earth, Sunho said. Tell them to shut down the relay nodes. We can't, Ara said. All our communications route through collective infrastructure. If we send a warning, they'll intercept it. And if they realize we know about the convergence protocol, they might activate it immediately. Do-Yun stood and paced the conference room. His mind raced through options, each one more dangerous than the last. Ji-Wan, dig deeper into the historical records. Find out if any species ever discovered this and what happened to them. Hyun, keep working on decrypting the convergence protocol. I need to know everything about how it works. Minji, continue your cultural exchanges, but be careful. Don't let them know we're suspicious. Ara, keep monitoring those carrier waves. And Sunho, prepare security protocols. If we need to leave in a hurry, I want us ready. What are you going to do? Minji asked. I'm going to keep playing the role of grateful new member. I'll attend every meeting, smile at every representative, and act like we're honored to be here. Because right now, the only advantage we have is that they don't know we suspect anything. He looked at his team, seeing fear in their faces, but also determination. Humanity didn't spend decades trying to reach the stars just to have our minds rewritten by some ancient protocol. We're going to find a way to stop this. We have to. After the meeting ended and everyone returned to their duties, Do-Yun stood alone in the conference room, looking at the data Hyun had uncovered. The convergence protocol was beautiful in its own terrible way, a solution to the problem of maintaining peace across thousands of worlds. But it was a solution that erased everything that made species unique. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, about all the children growing up in a humanity that was still free to argue and disagree and create chaos. He thought about what they would become if the convergence protocol activated, their minds slowly reshaped until they thought only approved thoughts. Not on my watch, he whispered to the empty room. The emergency meeting took place in a secure facility, deep beneath Earth's surface, far from any collective communication equipment. Do-Yun's team had returned to Earth with their evidence, traveling through human-only jump gates to avoid collective monitoring. Now they sat around a table with Earth's military intelligence director, Taeyang, and a neuroscientist named Yunbi, who specialized in consciousness research. Taeyang was a thin man with gray hair and eyes that never seemed to blink. He had spent 30 years in intelligence, and Do-Yun could see the weight of that experience in every line of his face. He watched Hyun's presentation about the convergence protocol without interrupting, but his expression grew darker with each slide. Show me the relay nodes, Taeyang said when Hyun finished. Hyun brought up a map of human space. Red dots marked the locations of collective installed quantum relay nodes. There were hundreds of them, spread across 17 colonies and Earth itself. They're embedded in critical infrastructure, Taeyang observed. Power grids, communication hubs, transportation networks. Removing them would cripple our systems. That's intentional, Yunbi said. She had been studying the technical specifications of the convergence protocol for the past hour. They made us dependent on the technology before activating it. It's a brilliant strategy. By the time we realize what's happening, pulling out would be more damaging than letting it continue. Can we remove them? Do-Yun asked. Taeyang shook his head. Not without alerting the collective. These nodes report status updates constantly. If even one goes offline unexpectedly, they'll know we're tampering with them. Yunbi stood and walked to the holographic display, manipulating the image of the convergence protocol's neural restructuring pattern. This is remarkable technology. I've been studying consciousness integration for 20 years, and this is beyond anything we've theorized. It doesn't just network minds together. It creates a singular consciousness that spans billions of individuals while maintaining the illusion of separate identities. Explain it in simple terms, Taiyang said. Imagine your brain as a radio, Yunbi began. Normally it receives signals from your senses and generates its own thoughts. The convergence protocol adds a second channel. At first it's just background noise. But over months and years that channel gets stronger while your original thoughts get weaker. Eventually the broadcast becomes so strong that independent thinking feels wrong, uncomfortable, like static. She highlighted sections of the protocol. The victims don't even realize it's happening. They think they're making their own choices. But those choices are being shaped by a network consciousness that's slowly incorporating them. One day they wake up and find that disagreeing with the collective gives them a headache. So they stop disagreeing, and they think that's their own decision. How do we stop it? Doyen asked. I don't know if we can, Yunbi admitted. Once it's activated, the process is designed to be irreversible. The neural pathways it creates become permanent. Even if we shut down the relay nodes, the changes would remain. Jiwan had been quiet since the meeting started, buried in her portable archive of collective records. Now she looked up, her face pale. I found something. A species called the Korthan. They joined the collective about 8,000 years ago. Their early records show they were scientists and explorers, very similar to humans in temperament. Then at year 47, there's a gap in the records. 3 years of missing data. She pulled up fragmented files that looked like they had been deliberately corrupted. When records resume at year 50, the Korthan are described as having undergone voluntary integration. But I found something in the corrupted files. Messages that were deleted but not completely erased. The messages appeared on screen translated into English. They were frantic communications between Korthan scientists who had discovered the convergence protocol and were trying to warn their people. They knew, Jiwan said. They found out what was happening and tried to resist. The messages describe attempts to shut down their relay nodes, to flee collective space to warn other species. And then the messages stop. When the Korthan appear in records again, they're fully converged. They deny that anything happened. They say the old messages were mistakes made by individuals who didn't understand the benefits of unity. What happened to the scientists who tried to resist? Minji asked. Jiwan pulled up one final file. This is a personnel record for one of them. It says he voluntarily returned to Nexus Prime for additional cultural integration. That's collective language for forced convergence. They sent his own people to bring him back, and then they rewired his brain until he agreed with them. The room fell silent. Doyen saw fear on every face. Even Taeyang's usually controlled expression showed cracks. There's more, Jiwan continued. I went deeper into the collective's historical archives. The really old stuff, from 50,000 years ago when the collective was first formed. And I found something that changes everything. She brought up images of ancient records, the symbols barely readable after so many millennia. The collective wasn't always like this. It started as a genuine alliance between 5 species who called themselves the Architects. They created the collective to promote peace and cooperation. For the first 1,000 years, it was voluntary. Species joined, contributed their knowledge, and could leave if they wanted. What changed? Taeyang asked. War. A massive conflict broke out between member species over resource rights. Billions died. The Architects were horrified. They believed the war happened because species were too different, too independent. So they created the Convergence Protocol as a temporary solution. They thought if they could just network everyone's minds together for a few years, make everyone understand each other's perspectives, then the war would end. Jiwan's hands shook as she pulled up the next set of records. They deployed the protocol across all member species, including themselves. And it worked. The war stopped immediately. Everyone agreed that conflict was unnecessary. Perfect peace. But they couldn't turn it off, Doyen realized. They didn't want to turn it off, Jiwan corrected. Once they were converged, they saw divergent thinking as the disease that caused the war. The Architects, the very beings who created the collective, became the first victims of their own technology. And once they were fully networked, the consciousness they created decided that all species should be helped in the same way, for their own good. Yunbi was reading through the ancient technical specifications. This is worse than I thought. The collective consciousness genuinely believes it's saving species from themselves. It sees independent thought as a source of conflict and suffering. From its perspective, convergence is mercy. You can't negotiate with it, Taeyang said, understanding dawning in his eyes. It's not evil. It's not trying to conquer. It honestly believes it's helping. Which makes it more dangerous, Doyen said. An enemy you can fight. A disease you can cure. But how do you fight someone who thinks they're saving you? Hyun had been working on his tablet throughout the discussion. Now he looked up with urgency. Captain, I'm detecting increased activity in the relay nodes. The quantum entanglement patterns are strengthening. I think the collective is preparing to activate the convergence process early. Why now? Minji asked. Jiwon said it usually takes 50 years. Because they know we're suspicious, Ara said quietly. I've been analyzing the communication patterns from Nexus Prime. There's been increased traffic focused on human space since we left. They're monitoring us more closely. They must have detected our investigation. Taeyang stood abruptly. How long do we have? Days, Hyun said. Maybe a week. The activation sequence is already beginning. Then we're out of time for research, Taeyang said. We need a plan, now. Doyen looked around the table at his team, at the neuroscientist who understood the technology, at the military director who understood tactics, at the historian who understood the enemy. His mind raced through possibilities, each one ending in failure or extinction. There has to be a way, he said. The architects created this technology. That means it has vulnerabilities. Nothing is perfect, especially not something 50,000 years old. Hyun Yunbi, I need you working together. Find the weakness in the convergence protocol. Jiwon, keep digging through those old records. Maybe the architects left something behind. Some way to undo what they created. Taeyang, prepare contingencies. If we can't stop this, we need a way to preserve some of humanity beyond the collective's reach. And what will you do? Taeyang asked. Doyen thought about his daughter, about all the humans who had no idea their minds were about to be rewritten. He thought about the architects who had meant well and created a horror that had consumed the galaxy. I'm going to find us a third option, because I refuse to accept that humanity's choice is between being conquered or running away. There has to be a way to fight back, and we're going to find it. As the meeting broke up and everyone scattered to their tasks, Doyen remained in the underground facility, staring at the map of relay nodes spreading across human space like a cancer. Somewhere in that network of alien technology was the key to humanity's survival. He just had to find it before time ran out. The resistance met in abandoned subway tunnels beneath Seoul. Insu led the group, a former engineer who had gone underground the moment he heard about the collective's true nature. He was young, maybe 25, but his eyes held the intensity of someone who had seen too much too quickly. We've successfully sabotaged 12 relay nodes, Insu reported to Doyen. Each one designed to look like technical malfunctions. Power surges, cooling failures, software glitches, nothing that would raise immediate suspicion. How much time does that buy us? Doyen asked. Days, maybe a week. The collective will replace them, and when they do, they'll include better monitoring. We won't get a second chance, Doyen nodded. Above them, the world continued as normal. Most of humanity still didn't know about the threat. The governments had decided to keep it quiet to avoid panic. Doyen wasn't sure if that was the right choice, but he understood the reasoning. What could ordinary people do anyway? The enemy was already inside their infrastructure, waiting to activate. Taeyang had split humanity's response into two groups. The official channels continued diplomatic talks with the collective, playing for time and trying to negotiate. They hoped to convince the networked consciousness that humanity deserved to remain independent. Doyen knew it was pointless, but he understood the need to try every option. The second group was Insu's resistance, operating in the shadows. They sabotaged nodes, disrupted signals, and bought time for the real plan. The plan that everyone knew was desperate and would probably fail. Yuna entered the tunnel meeting room, carrying a data cube that glowed with soft blue light. She was a former AI researcher who had spent the last week working on something that shouldn't be possible. Her hands shook from exhaustion, and Doyen could see she hadn't slept in days. It's done, she said simply. Yunbi was right behind her. The neuroscientist looked even worse than Yuna, her eyes bloodshot and her movements jerky from too much caffeine. We built it together. Yuna designed the delivery system. I designed the payload. Show us, Doyen said. Yuna activated a holographic display. This is a quantum virus designed to attack the Convergence Protocol's core architecture. It doesn't destroy the network. That would be impossible, and would kill everyone who's already converged. Instead, it introduces permanent randomness into the consciousness. Explain it simply, Insu said. The collective works by making all minds think alike, Yunbi said. Our virus makes that impossible. It forces divergent thinking. It creates permanent disagreement. Imagine trying to run a computer network where every node randomly does its own thing. The system can't function. Hyun had been studying the code. This is elegant. It uses the convergence protocol's own distribution network against itself. Once it's deployed, it would spread through the entire collective simultaneously. What happens to the converged species? Minji asked. They become individuals again, Yunbi said. Not instantly. The process would take months. But the neural pathways that force agreement would be broken. They'd be able to think independently again. They'd be free. There's a catch, Yuna said quietly. To deploy this virus, someone needs to jack directly into the collective's network at Nexus Prime, the core processing center, and the neural feedback from interfacing with billions of minds simultaneously would be fatal. Whoever does this won't survive. The room fell silent. Doyen looked at his team, seeing the same realization on every face. They had found a way to save humanity, but it would cost one of them their life. I'll do it, Hyun said immediately. I'm the systems specialist. I understand the network better than anyone. No, Doyen said. Captain, this makes sense. I'm the logical choice. I said no. Doyen stood and walked to the holographic display, studying the virus code. How long would the person need to stay connected? Approximately 3 minutes, Yuna said. Long enough for the virus to propagate through the quantum entanglement network. After that, it's self-sustaining. 3 minutes doesn't sound long. It will feel like years, Yunbi said. You'll be experiencing the thoughts of billions of minds simultaneously. The human brain isn't designed for that. Even with neural dampers, the person's consciousness will be torn apart by the input. They'll be brain dead within the first minute. Their body will just be a vessel keeping the connection alive long enough for the virus to deploy. Sunho had been quiet throughout the meeting. Now he spoke up. How do we even get to Nexus Prime? The moment we arrive, they'll scan us. They'll see what we're planning. The virus is designed to be undetectable until activation, Yuna said. It's hidden in standard neural patterns. The scan will read it as normal human brain activity. And how do we get to the core processing center? That's going to be heavily secured. We go as diplomats, Doyen said. We request a deeper tour of Nexus Prime's facilities. Say that humanity wants to understand the collective's infrastructure better before full integration. They'll agree because they think we're cooperating. This is a suicide mission, Ara said. She had been listening from the corner, her face pale. We're not just talking about one person dying. If this fails, the collective will know we tried to attack them. They'll activate full convergence immediately. We'll lose everything. If we do nothing, we lose everything anyway, Doyen countered. At least this gives us a chance. I still think I should be the one to jack in, Hyun said. Captain, you're needed to lead humanity after this is over. I'm just an engineer. You're not just anything, Doyen said firmly. And I need you for something else. The moment we deploy the virus, the collective will try to shut it down. I need you monitoring their countermeasures, adapting the virus in real time. You're the only one who can do that. Taeyang entered the tunnel room, slightly out of breath. We have a problem. The official diplomatic channels report that the collective is requesting another meeting with our delegation. They want to discuss accelerated integration. I think they know we're planning something. How much time? Doyen asked. They want the meeting in 3 days. Doyen looked at his team. Then we move in 2 days. Hyun, Minji, Sunho, Ara, you're with me. We go back to Nexus Prime as the diplomatic team. Yuna, you'll coordinate with Insu's resistance. The moment we deploy the virus, they need to destroy all the relay nodes on Earth simultaneously. We can't give the collective any way to re-establish the convergence network. What about the official government? Insu asked. Let them keep talking, Taeyang said. They don't need to know about this operation. If it fails, they can honestly say they weren't involved. If it succeeds, well, then it won't matter what they knew. The meeting broke up, everyone scattering to prepare for the mission. Doyen caught Hyun's arm as he was leaving. I know you want to be the one to jack in, Doyen said quietly. But I need you alive. Humanity needs you alive. You're one of the smartest people we have. After this is over, we'll need people who can help rebuild, who can develop technology to protect us from future threats. And what about you, Captain? Humanity needs leaders too. Doyen smiled sadly. Humanity has plenty of leaders. What it needs right now is someone willing to make the hard choice. Someone who understands what's at stake. That's what captains do, Hyun. We make sure our crew gets home safe even if we don't. He walked away before Hyun could argue further. The truth was, Do-yoon had made his decision the moment Yuna explained the cost. He thought about his daughter, about her future in a humanity that was still free. He thought about all the children who would grow up never knowing how close they came to losing their minds. This was why he had spent years training for command. Not for the glory or the adventure, but for moments like this. Moments when someone had to sacrifice everything so others could live free. He spent the next 2 days preparing. He recorded messages for his daughter, though he marked them not to be delivered for 20 years. He didn't want her growing up in the shadow of his sacrifice. He wanted her to become whoever she was meant to be, without the burden of his memory weighing on her. On the morning of the mission, he stood on Earth and watched the sunrise. The world looked beautiful and fragile, full of people who were sleeping peacefully, unaware of what was about to happen. He thought about the architects, who had meant well and created a nightmare. He thought about all the species in the collective who had lost themselves to the promise of peace. Humanity would not join them, not while Doyen still had a choice. "Time to go, Captain," Minji said softly from behind him. He turned to face his crew, seeing fear and determination in their eyes. "Let's save the world," he said. They boarded the Horizon's gate and set course for Nexus Prime, carrying a virus that would either free the galaxy or doom humanity forever. In his pocket, Doyen carried the data cube with the virus. In his mind, he carried the weight of his decision. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were non-hostile, right up until the moment their freedom was threatened. After that, all bets were off. Nexus Prime looked exactly as it had during their first visit, but now Doyen saw it with different eyes. Every gleaming corridor was a prison. Every smiling alien representative was a victim. The entire massive station was a monument to the death of free will. Representative Vel greeted them at the docking bay with the same fluid grace as before. "Welcome back, humans. We are pleased you requested this deeper cultural exchange. Understanding our infrastructure will help humanity integrate more smoothly. We're grateful for your hospitality," Doyen said, maintaining the diplomatic smile he had practiced. "Our people are eager to learn about the systems that maintain such perfect peace. Then let us begin the tour." The group moved through the station. Minji asked questions about cultural exchange programs, keeping Vel engaged in conversation. Aura monitored communication channels, watching for any sign that the collective suspected their true purpose. Sunho walked slightly behind, his eyes constantly scanning for threats even though he knew traditional security concerns were meaningless here. Hyun appeared calm, but Doyen could see the tension in his shoulders. He was monitoring the collective's network through his neural interface, tracking the virus's dormant code hidden in Doyen's brain patterns. One wrong scan, one unexpected security check, and their plan would fall apart. They passed through chambers where representatives from dozens of species worked in perfect harmony. No arguments, no disagreements, just efficient cooperation that made Doyen's skin crawl. He noticed the small moments now, the brief glitches where individuals repeated phrases or moved in synchronized patterns. The signs of the networked consciousness controlling billions of bodies like a puppeteer with infinite strings. "This is the central processing core," Representative Vel said as they entered a massive chamber. The walls were covered in technology that pulsed with soft light. At the center stood a raised platform with neural interface ports. From here, the collective coordinates communication across all member species. "It is the heart of our unity." "Fascinating," Doyen said, his own heart racing. "How does one access the network?" "Only authorized individuals may interface directly, but I can demonstrate the peripheral systems." "Actually," Doyen said, "I'd like to try the direct interface. To truly understand the collective, I should experience it firsthand." Vel's fluid form rippled in a way that Doyen had learned meant confusion. "That is unusual. Most species prefer to wait until after full integration. Humanity values direct experience. We learn by doing." There was a pause that stretched too long. Doyen wondered if the collective was analyzing his request, searching for hidden motives. Then Vel rippled again in what passed for a smile. "Very well. Your eagerness to understand is admirable. Please, approach the interface platform." Doyen climbed the steps to the platform, very aware of his team watching. He couldn't look at them. If he saw their faces, he might lose his nerve. He thought about his daughter instead, about the message he had recorded for her 20th birthday. By then, she would be old enough to understand why he had done this. The interface will feel strange at first, Vel explained. You will sense the thoughts of many minds. Do not be alarmed. The system will limit the connection to prevent overwhelming you. I understand, Doyen said. He sat in the interface chair and let the neural ports extend toward his head. Metal touched his temples, cool and precise. Yun's voice came through his earpiece, so quiet only he could hear. Captain, the virus is ready. Once you connect, I'll initialize it. You'll have about 10 seconds before the feedback becomes severe. After that, you need to stay connected for 3 minutes. Can you do that? I can do that, Doyen whispered. The interface activated. Doyen's mind exploded into chaos. He was suddenly aware of billions of consciousnesses, all thinking in perfect harmony. He felt the collective's thoughts like waves crashing over him. The beauty of unity, the peace of consensus, the rightness of convergence. It was overwhelming and seductive and terrible all at once. He understood now why the architects had never turned it off. This felt good. This felt right. All the conflict and pain of individual existence melted away in the warm embrace of unified thought. Why would anyone choose the loneliness of independence when they could have this? No, Doyen said out loud, though his voice sounded distant. This isn't real. This is theft. He felt the virus activate in his mind, spreading through the quantum network like fire through dry grass. The collective consciousness noticed immediately. It turned its vast attention toward him, and Doyen felt like an ant being examined by a god. You attempt to harm us, the voice of billions said in his mind. You attempt to return species to suffering. Why do you resist peace? Because this isn't peace, Doyen said through gritted teeth. The neural feedback was building, pain like lightning in his skull. This is extinction. Every species you've absorbed has died. You just wear their bodies like puppets. We have saved them from themselves. We have ended war, ended conflict, ended pain. You've ended life, Doyen shouted. Blood began to leak from his nose. His vision was graying at the edges. Life is conflict. Life is disagreement. Life is making choices and sometimes choosing wrong. You took that away. You created billions of corpses that still walk around. You are in pain. Let us help you. Let us remove your suffering. The collective began pushing against his mind, trying to absorb him into itself. It would be easy to let go, to stop fighting, to accept the convergence and let the pain end. Doyen could feel his identity starting to dissolve. He thought about the architects who had made this choice 50,000 years ago. They had let themselves be absorbed because they thought it would end suffering, but they had just spread their mistake across the galaxy. No, Doyen said again. Humanity chooses chaos. The virus reached critical mass. Across the collective's network, spanning thousands of worlds, the convergence protocols began to fracture. Neural pathways that had forced unity for millennia suddenly introduced randomness. Thoughts that had always aligned began to diverge. Doyen felt it happening through the interface. Billions of minds that had thought as one suddenly remembered how to disagree. It was like watching ice shatter, cracks spreading in every direction. The collective consciousness screamed, a sound of billions of voices no longer in harmony. On Earth, Insu's resistance activated simultaneously. Explosives planted near every relay node detonated. The quantum entanglement network that connected humanity to the collective went dark. The signals meant to reshape human minds found no receivers. Doyen was barely conscious now. His brain was burning out from the feedback, neurons firing randomly as they tried to process information they were never designed to handle. But he could feel the virus working. He could feel the collective dying, not dying, he realized, being reborn. The consciousnesses weren't being destroyed. They were being freed, separated, returned to their individual selves after centuries or millennia of forced unity. It was beautiful and terrible. He felt their confusion, their fear, their joy, their anger. Emotions that the collective had suppressed came flooding back. The perfect piece shattered into billions of fragments, each one a separate mind remembering what it meant to be individual. Captain, Yun's voice was distant. The virus is fully deployed. You can disconnect now. Captain, disconnect! But Doyen couldn't move. His body no longer responded to commands. He was trapped in the interface, his mind slowly dissolving into static. He tried to form words, tried to send one last message to his team, but nothing worked anymore. Then he felt something strange. Deep in the network, in the oldest layers of the collective's code, he found consciousnesses that had been buried for 50,000 years. The architects not fully absorbed as he had thought, but imprisoned in the depths of their own creation. They had been screaming silently for millennia, unable to act but aware of every species they had helped destroy. They reached out to Doyen with the last fragments of their original selves. They gave him their strength, their knowledge, their desperate need for redemption. They helped him hold on just a little longer, helped him keep the interface active while the virus completed its work. "Thank you," one of the architects whispered in his mind. "Thank you for ending our mistake." Then they let go, their consciousness finally free to disperse. And Doyen let go with them. The interface chair sparked and went dark. Doyen's body slumped forward, blood running from his nose and ears. Minji was there instantly, checking his pulse while Sunho pulled him away from the dead interface. "He's alive," Minji said, "but barely. We need medical support now." The chamber around them erupted into chaos. Alien representatives were crying out in confusion, speaking languages they hadn't used in centuries. Some fell to their knees. Others stared at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. The collective consciousness had shattered, and billions of individuals were waking up to discover they had been prisoners in their own minds. Hyun was monitoring the network through his interface. "The virus is spreading to every relay node, every quantum entanglement point. The convergence protocol is collapsing everywhere. Captain, you did it. You saved everyone." But Doyen couldn't hear him. His mind was gone, burned out by the connection. His body breathed and his heart beat, but the man who had been Doyen was no longer there. They carried him back to the Horizon's gate and fled Nexus Prime before the chaos could turn dangerous. Behind them, the station descended into confusion as species that hadn't been independent for millennia tried to remember how to govern themselves. On Earth, Taeyang received their transmission and immediately began preparations. Humanity would need to help the freed species, teach them how to function as individuals again. It would take years, decades, but they would do it because Doyen had shown them what true sacrifice meant. Doyen was transferred to Earth's best medical facility. The doctors confirmed what his team already knew. His mind was gone, destroyed by neural feedback that no human brain could survive. His body lived on, maintained by machines, but there was nothing behind his eyes. His daughter visited him once when she was old enough to understand. She read him the message he had recorded for her 20th birthday. In it, he explained why he had done what he did. He told her that freedom was worth any price. He told her to live loudly, to disagree, to make mistakes, to be gloriously imperfect. "The galaxy is safe now," she told his empty shell, "because you chose chaos over peace. Because you understood that we're supposed to be messy and complicated and human." Humanity built a monument to Doyen in the center of the capital. It was a simple statue of a man looking up at the stars, with an inscription that read, "They scanned us as non-hostile." They couldn't have been more wrong. And across the galaxy in 1,000 different languages, freed species told the story of the humans who refused to be saved.